from London, language learners, and today, after a long pause, it's time for an update on my Learning Basic Japanese project. First of all, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Gareth Popkins. Here we get to the heart of matters, language learning from many angles. My own projects and advice and tips, interviews with inspiring learners, a bit of language, vlogging as well. And if you haven't yet subscribed for the vibe, please do. You can get my free Language Learner Pro training by following the link in the description box underneath this video. Now to the project, and first let's get rid of this. Now to the project then. If you're a regular on the channel, you'll know that 15 months ago now, actually January last year, I started the project of getting a grip on basic Japanese in advance of my first ever trip to Japan, which was last October. You may have seen a lot of the vlogging I did from that trip over on this channel over the last few months. Being busy doing all that editing meant that I hadn't really had time to update you on what's been happening on the language learning project. So I've been keeping going on my plan of doing 30 minutes a day, five times a week. That was the plan I set for myself in January last year. When I got back in November, very beginning of November, I should have been straight back into my regular routine. I was really fired and inspired by the experience of being in Japan, and I definitely wanted to keep going with the language. And I did write a blog post updating on my experiences in the country with the language. I'll link to that again underneath this video. In November though, actually, it took me a while to get back into the routine, and I only managed to study on 11 days in November and clocked up just over 5 hours. December too, I wasn't fully back on form. I did 16 days, 16 half-hour slots in that month, but in January I was back really up to full speed, and on 22 days in that month I studied, 19 days in February, and in March I managed to do half an hour at least on 21 days. And that was over 12 hours in March then that I'd put into the language. So my running total now, intense focus work on Japanese with textbooks mainly, is 219 hours and 30 minutes, and that's since I started in January. To put that into perspective, in order to take the Japanese language proficiency test at number 5, which is the equivalent of A2 or upper beginner on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, it's estimated it takes you between 450 and 750 hours. If you already knew the Kanji writing system, it might be towards the bottom of that estimate. But as I don't, you know, I've still got quite a long way to go. Even if say I was a native Chinese speaker, I'm not really yet at the halfway mark, or just about the halfway mark, to being ready to take that upper elementary exam in Japanese. So let's keep it real, there's still a long way to go. But what have I been doing then in the last few months since I last reported to you? Well, I've been continuing to work with my core textbook, which is the Japanese from Zero series. There are 5 books in the series. I've shown you this one before. Before I went away, I'd completed books 1 and 2, and I had got part way into book 3. I think I was on lesson 3 when I went off to Japan. And I've returned to that and continued to work through this book. And I'm now actually at the end of lesson 8. Well, I'm into lesson 9 now, but I got to the end of lesson 8 by the end of March. So pressing ahead with that, slower than I'd hoped, because my original aim was to have covered all 3 books before I went away, so by the end of September. The reason partly that things slowed down with this volume was because this volume starts to introduce the Kanji, the characters from Chinese, the pictorial characters in which a lot of Japanese is written, and they really take a lot of time to learn, and that's really slowed things down. Also, I was doubling back to an extent to get some repetition, some recall of material covered earlier in the first 2 books. But keeping going through the book then, I have come across some interesting new structures. So the to particle used for reported speech in Japanese, the taimasu form for continuous tenses, forming continuous tenses, quite easy actually. The verb so far anyway, doesn't seem to be that complicated in Japanese in many ways. And some new counter words. These are used after a particular object has been mentioned with a number. Then you have to add the counting word as well. There are different counting words for different classes of objects, such as people, flat objects, general counter, long, thin objects, that sort of thing. This is a system as well, which comes or it also exists in Chinese. So there's been more of that, more vocabulary, as I say, more phrases. A good thing about this course is it's very conversationally based. It doesn't have audio with the course, and so I've been supplementing with the Pimsleur audio only course, which I was using last year as well. And now I have moved on since I last reported back to you to level 3, and I've actually finished level 3 and I've got level 4 now, so I'll be starting on that soon. This is a course you're supposed to do every day. Each lesson lasts about 30 minutes. It's prompt and response. Now ideally one would sit in an armchair, focused, headphones on, go through the course. In that sense I haven't been using Pimsleur properly. What I've been doing is I've had it on in the headphones when I'm doing my run in the park, which I like to do 3 times a week, and we've only got semi-lockdown here in London at the moment if you're watching this as I record it at the beginning of April 2020 during the coronavirus. So I'm still able to get some Pimsleur on the headphones as I go jogging. What I can't do now is listen as I walk to the underground train for my commute, because I am home working at the moment, so I'm not going into the office 3 or 4 times a week like I used to. So that time for a bit of Pimsleur in the ears has gone. The other thing I'm not able to do at the moment is use flashcards, which was a way I was learning and reviewing vocabulary and phrases from Japanese from zero, which I had been doing actually in the underground train on the way and on the way back from work. In addition to Japanese from zero and Pimsleur, another course I'm using is the Assimil course, which is actually a French course, although there is an older edition of this available in English as well and in German. And I've actually, in the last couple of months, been using this course a lot more. It's structured initially around a short conversation with a low-level grammatical explanations. That's to say light touch rather than low-level, perhaps grammatical explanations, and again a small number of exercises. But what I've actually been doing with the course is dictation. It's a technique I find very useful for getting me to focus on the sounds of a language, new structures and words. So I've been listening to each conversation through a couple of times and then trying a dictation exercise and then checking that against the Japanese with the French parallel translation on the other side from the Assimil course. In the last couple of weeks, I've also acquired a new book, which I'm keen to show you, and it's actually a very old one. It's an old Teach Yourself Japanese course, first appeared in the 1950s, I think. I will see if there's a date at the front. Yes, 1958. Don't know if you can see that. But this is a course which is a classic grammar translation course with some concessions to conversation, in that there are a series of conversations at the back. There's a lot of explanation. It doesn't teach any of the 3 Japanese writing systems, but it's a good reference work, I think. I was finding Japanese from zero a bit difficult to navigate if I want to go back and check points, and Assimil is not so good for that either in some ways. So I'm quite enjoying the direct instruction which is available in the Teach Yourself book, and it has a lot of back and forth translation exercises in it as well. So that's something very different, but something I think I want to come back to. So that maybe brings me to my goals now for April with the language. Basically is going to be continuing on my current track. That's to say, focusing on basic patterns, core vocabulary in the language. I'm still holding off speaking a lot or wider listening beyond the audio that comes with the courses. I think it's really important to focus on audio at the very beginning and to keep returning to it. But I've decided, in contrast to the approach I took with Basque, when it was very sort of speak from day one, 2 or 3 half-hour sessions on italki with a teacher a week, instead of that I'm really holding off till I feel I've got quite a bit of vocab, quite a lot of structures before I start hiring and paying for teachers and trying to listen to other sources of Japanese as well. So it's a different approach. It's taken me back really to the approach I was using when I first started learning languages 30 years ago with French and Welsh. For the moment, I'm happy to continue with that approach during April, so no plans yet to start engaging teachers, and I shall be continuing to work through the Japanese from Zero Book 3. I don't think I'll finish it in April, but I'll keep moving forward. I'm now on just about to start. I'm in chapter 9 actually, I'm not nearly at unit 10 at all. Continuing with the Pimsleur, but now I should be moving to level 4, which is already loaded onto my phone, and continuing with the Assimil, and taking a bit of time to read the explanations in English in the old Teach Yourself Japanese, and to do, as a way of reviewing material I've already covered, the exercises in the first chapters. I'm maybe going to try and look at the first 10 chapters in that book. That might be quite a good goal for April. There are 30 altogether, but obviously the further you get into the book, the more difficult the units will become. But certainly to do some of those translation exercises. Now, the other thing I want to do, given that we're now in lockdown and likely to be in lockdown or semi-lockdown for the rest of April at least, is to have a second study slot. If you're regular, you'll know I'm a fan of habit for language learning, and the regular 30-minute morning study slot is really the backbone of my work on Japanese, as it has been with Basque and with other languages. But now I'm keen to open up a satellite slot. Now, I've talked about those on the channel before, suggested you maybe spend 10 or 15 minutes in the evening reviewing or what you've done in your earlier slot or preparing for the following day's slot. Given that I've lost about 30-40 minutes commuting exposure time when I'd have been listening to the audio on the way to the station, going through the flashcards on the underground train, I want to try now and win back that time here at home and not let it just disappear. So a second slot. The second slot for me though is going to be half an hour now rather than just 15 minutes. So that's something I want to try and sustain throughout April. So that's where I am with my Japanese at the moment. It's really pretty much steady as she goes, but I do have to say I'm finding that more and more is sticking. I'm seeing more and more patterns, and things are getting, I think, slightly easier to remember, and I think that's because I've got a bit more of a context and getting a bit more of a feel for the language. What about you? Are you a Japanese learner? How have your experiences been in the last few months with the language? Has the coronavirus lockdown affected your language learning in any way? Do let me know in the comments below. Share your methods and techniques. Let me know what resources you're using. Are they the same as mine or are they different? And if you're an old hand at Japanese, then do let me have any feedback and any advice in terms of approach in the comments underneath this video as well. One other thing I nearly forgot to say, I have decided for now not to press ahead with learning the Kanji writing system in addition to learning the basic patterns and core vocabulary. Fascinating though I find the Kanji, and I was using Heisig's book Remembering the Kanji, I've talked about that before, I just do feel now that it is too much to take all at once with a relatively limited time I'm prepared to put into this project on a regular basis. So reluctantly the Kanji are paused. I had hoped I was going to, planning to make a big push on them in 2020, but I realised now I have to keep going with the methodical approach to core vocabulary and patterns that I started on last year. So I'm just doing the Kanji, which are coming up now in Japanese from Zero. So there are 80 of them in book 3, many of which I've already met before in the work that I had done on with Heisig's Remembering the Kanji book, and there will be another 80 if I move on to book 4 with Japanese from Zero, but it's going to be at that sort of pace. I think now it's going to be more important to move into listening much more and getting much more of the language in my head as a sound system, as a pattern system, before moving to the writing. As I say, if I was doing this project full time or I had 2 or 3 hours a day to spend, it would be a different story, I'm sure. But that, I think, is what I can realistically sustain at the moment. I'm going to have to take it in stages. So that's it then. Thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to share your experiences below. If you haven't yet subscribed for the vibe, then please do. Please do throw me a thumbs up. It really helps to YouTube's algorithms to show the videos then to other people who might be interested. And do tickle that bell and share the affair. That's what I normally say, isn't it? I'm so out of practice with this, with all the vlogging I've been doing recently. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. See you soon here on the channel. Bye!